living standards and prosperity. And we back your call for a fair migration system that allows you to continue to employ skilled workers from overseas. We won't set false immigration targets or refuse to guarantee the right to stay for EU nationals currently working in Britain. But we will take action to prevent undercutting of workers' pay and conditions and insist that employers invest in boosting the quality of skills, training and apprenticeships at home. Good employers are also undercut by those who piggyback on others' investment or try to steal a march in a race to the bottom of low skills, low productivity and low pay. Far from being alternatives, economic prosperity and social justice are two sides of the same coin. We can, and I believe must, have both. The progressive policies of previous Labour governments helped civilise, industrialise, educate and deliver increased and shared prosperity. Government doing what all good businesses do, taking the long view and adapting to change. For too long, there was a damaging consensus that government just needed to get out of the way for business to flourish. That consensus, I think, has broken down. The CBI rightly identifies that we need more investment in skills. Government needs to reverse the cuts in further education and support business to deliver high-quality apprenticeships. And I hope in the autumn statement we will see two more things. The reversal of what would be the largest real terms cut in the school's budget since the 1970s and the funding for the government's nurseries pledge. We now need, more than ever, we need government comprehensively to raise its game on the challenge of Brexit. Its shambolic handling to date has fuelled uncertainty and is hampering long-term business planning. In 1963, Harold Wilson famously said, if the country was to prosper, a new Britain would need to be forged in the white heat of a scientific revolution. More than 50 years later, we now face the task of creating a new Britain, not just out of Brexit and a new relationship with Europe, but from the challenge of the fourth industrial revolution. We know the first industrial revolution saw mechanised production powered by steam. The second was powered by electricity. The third was driven by the internet and digital communication. The fourth industrial revolution is being powered by the Internet of Things and big data to develop cyber physical systems and smart factories. I might add that this industry, 4.0, was pioneered by the German government's own high-tech strategy. How we best respond to Brexit and the fourth industrial revolution will require a lot of radical thinking by all of us. It will challenge yesterday's received wisdom of private good, public bad. It will need common good intervention. We certainly won't be telling you how to run your organisations, though someone did point out to me that over the last 2 years, Labour has more than doubled its membership and paid off £20 million of loans and returned to profit. So you see, we're a successful business in our own right. It's all right, we're not joining the CBI yet. We won't stand back when there is injustice in the workplace or the boardroom, as we all saw with Sports Direct and BHS. All we ask is that for the investment we make for you, from building better infrastructure to delivering a high-skilled workforce, that you make your contribution to help the next generation of workers, the next entrepreneur or the next business coming down the road. And in return, we'll clamp down on the people cheating our economy with aggressive tax avoidance and evasion by doubling the number of investigators to chase payment and ending the payment of excessive dividends to offshore owners. Aggressive tax avoidance and evasion is a burden and deadweight on us all, and we'll work at home and internationally to bring it to an end. If we believe in building a fairer and more equal economy, the indicators of whether Britain is doing well shouldn't just be economic growth, interest rates and inflation. The measure of a successful economy must take into account how our policies and businesses are helping tackle poverty, inequality and low pay, and how they increase productivity and protect our precious environment and planet. Labour's offer is to work together with business to develop prosperity for the whole country. We want everyone and every community to share in that prosperity in every part of the country. Under a Labour government, there'll be no more exploitative zero-hours contracts. We'll put an end to them. And there'll be no more poverty pay for those in work. We want to raise the minimum wage to £10 an hour by 2020. And we'll make sure businesses, including small businesses, are supported to deliver these goals in a sustainable way. We recognise the challenges of change. The challenge of Brexit and cutting-edge technology, especially from the gig economy, throws up both problems and opportunities, which is why I invite all of you, along with businesses across the UK, to get involved and engaged in helping us, all of us, to shape Britain's future. We want you to feed into our industrial strategy, led by our Shadow Business Secretary, Clive Lewis, to design an industrial strategy that meets the needs of 21st century Britain. It isn't about the old straw man of picking winners or pouring good money after bad into white elephants. Instead, we'll set the missions, put in place the right institutional framework and support, and provide businesses with the opportunities to develop our economy, provided, of course, that businesses live up to their side of the deal, on wages, on workers' rights, and on paying taxes. We want our relationship with business to be a partnership, Labour's new settlement for business. And in case there was any doubt at all, Labour has an open door for employers, innovators, and investors. And we welcome your ideas and advice. To ensure that prosperity is spread across the country, it's vital that the devolution of powers and funding must be delivered closer to businesses and the people that work for them. The north-south divide in income, jobs and pay is widening faster than ever. Last year, when jobs increased by 277,000 in London, they rose by only 1,000 in the northwest and fell by 40,000 in the northeast. Britain now has one of the most extreme regional inequalities of any country in Western Europe. We pioneered devolution in government, devolving power to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, set up regional development agencies across England. We developed the Northern Way concept to improve infrastructure, trade and local government across the north. That's been scrapped by the Conservatives and the Northern Way only to bring them back as weaker local enterprise partnerships and the Northern Powerhouse. And if we to get sustainable growth in post-Brexit Britain, then we have to maximise these collaborative partnerships. I'll give you an example. Hull, a city devastated by the loss of the fishing industry, has once more turned to the sea to find its future. The Labour Council, its MPs and government worked with Siemens to invest £160 million in Greenport Hull to build wind turbine blades to power the renewable energy revolution taking place just off the coast, creating 1,000 jobs into the bargain. That's why our proposal for a national investment bank will be supported by a network of regional banks, publicly accountable and locally managed, with specialist knowledge of their areas. These regional banks will help break the logjam in the British financial system that has starved small and medium-sized enterprises of the lending they need to flourish. Labour will be on the side of the innovators, entrepreneurs and investors that our economy and our workforce needs. We will use public intervention to unleash the creativity and potential of entrepreneurial Britain. Labour is open. We're open to change, open to new ideas, open to working with you. In return, we ask you to be open to listening to the workforce in the boardroom as well as on the shop floor. Open to investing in Britain and paying a bit more corporation tax to make this country more powerful, more productive and fairer, so you'll get a return on your investment. And open, I hope, to working with us. Together, I'm confident we can rebuild and transform Britain for the common good, to create a fairer, prosperous and more sustainable country for all. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. Can I sit over there? Yeah, sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, a marathon. Jeremy has agreed to take some questions. If you put your hands up, we'd be pleased to tend to you. Here's a hand up here on my right, and anyone shy on the left here. if you introduce yourself so he can recruit you to the Labour Party.
John Bennell from Advanced. Advanced is a great British software and services company. And as such, we're proud to be developing innovative products for 20,000 British customers. Now, what can you do to help Advanced and the greater British technology sector?
Work with you on training and apprenticeships, work with you on innovation, and I don't know what relationships you have with universities and education, but clearly you're taking things forward to a new level. That's good. It's also providing opportunities for the creativity amongst our young people. I meet a lot of graduates who've been through university, done science, engineering, computer degrees and others, who often feel they are not properly valued when they come out of university, don't get the support they need when they go into work, and end up doing something else or just being totally disillusioned with their achievements. So I think it is about investment. We'd want to work with you on that. We'd be happy to meet you in opposition to talk about how your company's going and what's going on. Well done for the advancements you're making. Water. Thank you very much.
Next question. Come on, come on. There's only a few minutes left of the day.
There's a gentleman over there.
Energy.
Paul, there's a gentleman over there. I can see him. There's one over there.
And there's one here. It's just coming to you. And then next is this nice man, number 5.
Hello, Ian Stewart from Deloitte. How would a future Labour government make a material difference to inequality about which you talked? I mean, what would be the policies to reduce inequality?
Inequality exists in many ways in society, but in reality it starts with very, very small children not getting good nursery education, not getting good places in nurseries, and then often underachieving in primary school, and so it goes on through there. So my absolute determination is to invest much more in early years education to give children the start they want. But also in primary schools, I want to see children being more innovative and giving the chance. Basic science lessons as well as music lessons are very, very important in primary schools. But it's also a question of housing and the opportunities children get. I represent a constituency where a third of my community live in the private rented sector, paying often very high rents. Many of those families living in frankly poor conditions and very overcrowded. Those children, in turn, underachieve in school. So it's chasing inequality at the very beginning. Investment in good quality housing has a return all round. So that's the first area, which is, if you like, a general social policy. The second is on gender inequality on pay. That has to be dealt with. And it's also about opportunities and training for older workers. So funding adult education is important, and working with employers to develop people's skills as they go through. And I'd also say that those employers that look at the advantages of employing people with disabilities rather than seeing them as a problem often do well. Half of the households living in poverty in Britain have a member of their community who is suffering from a disability or experiencing a disability. I think that has to be dealt with. And likewise, I pay tribute to those companies that have often taken on ex-offenders. Obviously, people have offended and gone to prison, but when they come out, it's important for all of us that their talents and skills be developed in a good, law-abiding way. So companies that do that. So I'm looking at dealing with inequalities in a lot of ways, and our policies we put forward would be measured against the levels of inequality that exist within our society. It can't be right that there are still people sleeping on the streets of this country. It can't be right that you look at Cathy Come Home on television last week on the 50th anniversary of it. And yes, times have changed, but some of that injustice and inequality is still there. People aren't happy and aren't comfortable with that, and I want to be part of a solution to dealing with that level of inequality by public investment to release talent for the common good. Thank you for your question.
Great. We're time for 2 more questions, that's all. So I've got one here and number 3.
I'd probably describe myself as a capitalist. And you talked earlier about too many people feeling they've missed out on the lost generation and Brexit in North America. And I absolutely recognise that. I suppose my question is, in terms of a future economy, Is there an economy or a country that you admire? What example could you give me that might illustrate what the economy would look like under your government?
Thank you. Great question. We'll have a short answer, so I'm going to take 2 more questions, Jeremy.
During my life, I managed to visit a very large number of countries, and I found good in all of them, and I found some things very bad in all of them as well. I wouldn't say I have any Mecca anywhere. What I do admire is the sense of public investment and enterprise that comes with the Scandinavian countries and the way in which they prioritise. Then you also admire the innovation and skills of many living in very poor countries, particularly trying to develop sustainable and innovative agriculture in a very difficult situation. So I've admired many people in many African and Latin American countries that have also done a great deal to promote innovative ideas and growth. So I think we learn from each other, we learn from travel, we learn from ideas. I don't have any one Mecca anywhere.
Jeremy, thank you. Question 3 is going to be a short question, so I can then do number 2.
Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, Jeremy. Chris MacDonald from the Materials Processing Institute. I'm also the Innovation Lead for the UK Metals Council, so I welcome your comments around innovation. But I work particularly with the foundation industries, steel, metals, materials and so on. They're very important, but they face very clear kind of international competitiveness issues. How would the Labour Party address the needs of this important industrial sector?
We are very worried about the future of the steel industry. What happened in Redcar was terrible, with the loss of the blast furnace and the loss of the manufacturing capacity there. And whilst there has been some improvements, there's still a big cloud hanging over Port Talbot, as well as other steel plants across Britain. If we're to have a manufacturing industry in Britain, there has to be a steel industry at the basis of it. That's, I would have thought, very clear to everybody. And also encouraging the enormously high quality that we get from steel in this country. And so when an industry is faced with what the steel industry is faced with, of dumping particularly by China on the European market, the British market, we would be a government that wants to prevent that dumping. And indeed, I raised the matter directly with the Chinese president when I was invited to meet him about the dumping they were doing. Stop the dumping, stop the undercutting. Fair trade is fine. This wasn't fair trade. This was dumping to destroy our industry. There has to be a government that's prepared to intervene, support that industry to get through that crisis, but above all to recognise that if we don't have a metal base to our manufacturing industry, there is no manufacturing industry.
Thank you, Jeremy. The last question for the CBI 2016 conference from Steve Beachy.
Thank you, Paul.
It's a big burden, Steve.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm from the Waits Group. My name's Steve Beachy. We're one of the UK's largest privately owned construction and house building companies. Obviously, we do have a housing crisis in the country. So if you were in power, what would you specifically do to get the hundreds of thousands of houses built as quickly as possible?
I would immediately allow local authorities to access borrowing against their asset value and income stream in order to build the council housing that's necessary. Because your company, for example, has built many council houses over many years, and you're very good at it, and you've got a very good training program in so doing. One of the problems is that because of the lack of government support for a lot of social house building, it ends up with a housing association getting a substantial plot in order to build, say, 200-300 units. But because of the lack of funding for social housing, the housing association then ends up building, say, a third or a quarter of them for sale, the rest for commercial rent, and the number that are there for the council housing model of lifetime tenancies and social rent is very, very small indeed. We have a housing crisis. It affects different parts of the country in different ways. In the southwest, for example, the plethora of second homes means there's less opportunity for people. In London and the southeast, it means that those on an average wage or below average wage cannot afford to buy anything anywhere in London, so commute further and further, and we end up with a job problem. And so what I want to do is invest in good quality council housing, have some degree of longer-term tenancies and regulation in the private rented sector, but also give support for first-time buyers when they want to buy a place at an affordable rent. First mortgage I got was supported by a local authority, and I got a flat as a result of it. That is simply barely available at the present time. It can't be right that we have so many people living in such overcrowded places, so many in the private rented sector that don't meet energy efficiency standards, and so many children underachieving in school because they haven't got any place to do their homework because they're so overcrowded. Invest in people, we all get the rewards and we all benefit. Thanks for your question, and thanks for the training you give to workers in waste.
Ladies. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to hand you over to the Director General of the CBI, Carolyn Fairbairn, and I shall see the leader of the Labour Party off and thank him hugely.
He's taking me off the premises, actually.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Great job. Super job.
Well, we are coming to the close of our 2016 CBI conference, and time is running late, so I will be brief. The main thing is to invite you to join me for a drink in the Great Hall. But just a couple of observations before we close, and 4 very quick.